Never go to that ranch, James. Promise me. My wife Carmen had always called it worthless desert land. After her sudden death, the lawyer handed me keys and said the Texas property was now mine. Since Carmen always claimed it was valueless desert, I planned to sell immediately. But curiosity made me drive out for one look before calling a realtor. The moment I unlocked that front door, I went numb with shock. The worthless land was a $50 million oil operation. But Carmen hadn't just left me a fortune. She'd left me something else hidden deep in an underground bunker that would reveal far more family secrets than I ever imagined. If you think you know what family secrets I found behind that locked door, drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from. I sat in Mr. Sterling's wood-paneled office 3 weeks after burying my wife, staring at the mahogany desk between us. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and coffee, but all I could think about was Carmen's roses dying in our backyard because I kept forgetting to water them. In 32 years of marriage, Carmen Rodriguez had been my anchor. She'd never been demanding, but about one thing she'd been absolutely firm. I was never to visit her family's old land in West Texas. "Just empty desert, my love," she'd say. Nothing but dust and bad memories. I'd respected her wishes, even when curiosity gnawed at me. That was our way. I trusted Carmen completely. But Carmen was gone now, taken by a stroke on a Tuesday morning while watering those roses she loved. The funeral had been a blur of casseroles and condolences of my 3 children, Adrian, Diego, and Catalina, flying in from Houston, Denver, and Austin just long enough to see their mother buried in San Fernando Cemetery. Then they scattered back to their busy lives, leaving me alone with silence that felt like drowning. "Mr. Rodriguez." Sterling's voice was gentle. He was thin with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I know this is difficult, but there are final matters regarding your wife's estate." Everything felt difficult these days. Getting out of bed, making coffee for one breathing without Carmen, all harder than my 2 tours in Afghanistan. Sterling slid a small wooden box across his desk. Inside lay an antique brass key attached to a longhorn keychain and a sealed envelope with my name in Carmen's precise handwriting. The same script she'd used for grocery lists and birthday cards for 3 decades. "What is this?" I asked, my voice rough. "Your wife purchased property in West Texas 3 years ago," Sterling said carefully. "According to her instructions, you were only to be informed after her passing. The deed has been transferred to your name, along with all mineral rights." The room tilted. Property Carmen never mentioned buying anything. Sterling consulted his notes. 2,500 acres in Reeves County near Pecos. It's called the Esperanza Ranch. He paused. "Mr. Rodriguez, based on recent geological surveys and current oil market conditions, we estimate the total value at approximately $50 million. The words hit like a physical blow. $50 million. Carmen, who'd clipped coupons religiously and bought generic cereal, who'd insisted we didn't need a new truck when mine hit 200,000 miles, had been sitting on a fortune without saying a word. My hands trembled as I lifted the brass key. The longhorn keychain caught the afternoon light, and I could hear Carmen's voice. "Promise me, James, never go to that ranch." But Carmen was gone, and her secrets were calling from across the Texas desert. For 32 years I'd honored her wishes about that land. For 32 years I'd trusted her judgment without question. Now holding the key to a $50 million mystery, I realized I'd never really known my wife at all. The woman who'd shared my bed, raised my children, and held my hand through every crisis had been keeping secrets that could change everything. I thought about our modest house on the south side, about the overtime shifts I'd worked to pay for the kids' college, about all the times Carmen had worried over bills while sitting on a fortune. Why had she hidden this from me? What else didn't I know? That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow I would drive to West Texas and see what Carmen had been hiding from me for 32 years. The desert highway stretched endlessly before me, 4 hours of empty road giving me too much time to think. I'd left San Antonio before dawn, Carmen's words echoing in my memory. "Nothing but worthless desert land, my love. Just dust and memories." But if that were true, why had Sterling's surveys shown $50 million in oil deposits? The landscape around Pecos was harsh and unforgiving. Endless scrub brush and rocky outcroppings under a merciless sun. This was oil country where fortunes were made on geological gambles and families feuded over mineral rights. When I turned onto the dirt road marked Esperanza Ranch, my breath caught. This wasn't the abandoned wasteland I'd expected. A pristine gravel drive wound between maintained fence posts toward buildings that looked like a magazine spread about luxury ranches. The main house was stunning, native stone and weathered timber with a wraparound porch and large windows catching morning light. Beyond it stood a restored barn outbuildings, and in the distance oil derricks pumping steadily against the blue sky. A weathered man in his 60s emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. "You must be Mr. Rodriguez," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Wade Thompson. Been managing this place for your wife for 3 years?" "3 years," I repeated, still processing what I was seeing. "Wade, I had no idea any of this existed until yesterday." His face softened. "Mrs. Rodriguez was specific about that. Said you weren't to know until after she passed." He gestured toward the house. "She spent every penny fixing this place up, turning it from a wreck into something special." As Wade led me through the property, Carmen's secret project became clear. She'd restored everything. Buildings operations even brought the oil wells online with a company from Midland. The house was furnished with her impeccable taste. Comfortable leather furniture and family photos I'd never seen. The oil discovery was pure luck. Wade explained as we stood looking out over the derricks. Mrs. Rodriguez bought this because it was her grandmother's homestead. The petroleum company approached her about mineral rights 2 years ago. Turned out to be one of the richest deposits in West Texas. Carmen had grown up poor daughter of migrant workers who'd scraped together enough to buy this land in the 1940s. Her family lost it during the oil bust of the 1980s, and somehow my wife had quietly bought it back. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked. "Can't say for sure," Wade replied carefully. "But Mrs. Rodriguez talked about wanting to surprise you, having something special for the family. She was always planning, always thinking 3 steps ahead." I was still processing this when my phone rang. Adrian's name flashed on the screen, and something cold settled in my stomach. My eldest son never called unless he wanted something. "Dad," his voice was sharp, businesslike. "We need to talk. Diego and I know about the ranch. We're flying in tomorrow, and we expect a full explanation." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, wondering how my sons had learned about Esperanza Ranch so quickly, and why their first instinct was confrontation rather than conversation. Wade watched me with an expression suggesting he'd dealt with difficult family situations before. "Your boys?" I nodded, already dreading tomorrow. Carmen had kept this place secret for 3 years, but somehow less than 24 hours after I'd learned about it myself, my sons were making demands. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly as I stood on my wife's secret ranch, holding the key to a $50 million mystery, and facing the reality that my children saw dollar signs where I saw Carmen's final gift. They descended on the ranch like vultures arriving in a black rental SUV that kicked up dust clouds. My sons, who hadn't visited once since their mother's funeral, had coordinated overnight flights from Houston and Denver. Adrian stepped out first, his expensive suit absurd against the Texas landscape. At 32, he'd inherited Carmen's intelligence, but none of her warmth. Diego followed, 29 and soft from too many business lunches. Both carried themselves with entitled swagger. Catalina arrived separately, in her Honda Civic, from Austin. At 26, she still had Carmen's gentle eyes, though today they were clouded with confusion. She'd always been our peacemaker. "Dad." Adrian's greeting was curt. He'd brought his own lawyer, a thin man who looked uncomfortable. "We need to discuss this situation." "What situation?" I asked. "Don't play dumb," Diego interjected. $50 million, Dad. Mom sat on $50 million and never told us." Wade emerged from the barn, saw the family gathering, and quietly retreated. "Your mother had her reasons," I said carefully. "Her reasons for what? For making you sole beneficiary, while cutting her children out?" Adrian's laugh was cold. "For hiding the biggest windfall this family's ever seen?" "She didn't cut anyone out. This was her family's land. Money that should have secured our futures," Diego interrupted. "Paid off loans, helped with houses, funded college accounts." "What college accounts?" "None of you have children. You're too busy with careers to think about family." Catalina flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's not fair, Papa," she said quietly. "We're trying to understand why Mom kept this secret from all of us." Adrian sensed his opening. "Exactly, Cat. Think logically. Dad had to know. Married couples don't hide $50 million purchases. He's been playing us acting like the grieving widower while sitting on a fortune." "That's not true," I protested. "Then explain it," Diego pressed. "Explain how Mom bought 2,500 acres without you knowing. How she managed renovations, hired staff, coordinated with oil companies, all while keeping you in the dark. I couldn't explain it because I didn't understand it myself. Carmen had been meticulous about finances, discussing every major expense. The idea she'd orchestrated this without my knowledge seemed impossible. Maybe they're right, Papa, Catalina said softly. Maybe you did know about this place. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to keep it all for yourself. Her words hit harder than any physical blow. My daughter, who'd once crawled into my lap during thunderstorms, was looking at me like a stranger, like I was the kind of man who'd lie to his children about their mother's legacy. Cat. I started, but she was already turning away, walking toward her brothers with defeated posture. Adrian's satisfied smile told me everything. This wasn't about understanding Carmen's choices or honoring her memory. This was about money, pure and simple, and my sons had just turned my daughter into their weapon against me. The desert wind howled across the ranch as I watched my family splinter into pieces, each of us standing on different sides of a chasm that $50 million had carved between us. Wade found me sitting in Carmen's office at midnight, staring at her desk as if it might reveal the secrets my wife had taken to her grave. The house felt impossibly quiet. After the day's confrontation, every sound amplified by my children's accusations. Can't sleep either, Wade asked, settling into the leather chair across from me. Mrs. Rodriguez used to sit right there when she was working late, always planning something. Planning what and why keep me in the dark. Wade studied me, then walked to the bookshelf behind Carmen's desk. His fingers traced along leather spines until he found a slim volume of Emily Dickinson poems Carmen had treasured since college. She told me if you ever seemed lost, really lost, I should show you this. He pulled the book forward, and I heard a soft click. A section of bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. Jesus Christ, I breathed. Mrs. Rodriguez had this built during renovations. Wade explained, flicking on lights that illuminated a spacious room below. Said every ranch house needed a storm cellar, but this was something else. The hidden room looked like something from a spy movie. Multiple monitors lined one wall, connected to sophisticated computer systems. Filing cabinets stood along another wall, and in the center sat a leather chair facing the largest screen. But what caught my attention were hundreds of video files displayed on the monitor. Day 1 for James, when he's ready. Day 30, about the boys. Day 100, the truth about the money. 365 files total, one for every day following Carmen's death. She made videos, I whispered. Started recording 6 months before she passed, Wade said. Spent hours down here talking to that camera like you were sitting right there. With trembling hands, I clicked the first file. The screen filled with Carmen's face. Not the tired version from her final months, but the vibrant woman I'd fallen in love with. Her dark hair was pulled back in the simple ponytail she'd worn, gardening eyes, holding that spark of mischief that had first captured my heart. Hello, my love, she said, her voice clear as if she were beside me. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you found the ranch despite my warnings. Tears blurred my vision as she continued. I know you're confused, probably angry, wondering why I kept this from you. The truth is, James, I bought back my grandmother's land because I discovered something about our sons that broke my heart. Something I couldn't tell you while alive because I needed to protect our family first. Carmen's expression grew serious. Adrian has been laundering money for a cartel operation out of Houston for 2 years. Diego has been running a Ponzi scheme through his energy consulting business, stealing from investors' retirement funds. I have evidence of everything, James. Bank records, recorded conversations, documentation that could send both boys to federal prison for decades. My world tilted. My sons, successful, educated men I'd raised to value honesty, were criminals. I bought this ranch with money from my grandmother's jewelry pieces I'd kept hidden since she died. I wanted to create something clean for our family, something built on love instead of lies. But I knew someday our sons' crimes would catch up with them, and we'd need leverage to protect Catalina and ourselves. Carmen leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to the intimate tone she'd used during our most private conversations. There's one more secret about Diego that will break your heart, my love. But first you need to see all the evidence I've gathered. Following Carmen's video instructions, Wade led me to the old barn, our flashlights cutting through darkness. The structure looked weathered and abandoned, but Wade's confident stride suggested otherwise. Mrs. Rodriguez was clever, he said, pulling aside a loose board near the back wall. Anyone snooping would see nothing but an old barn. The hidden panel revealed a steel door with an electronic keypad. Wade punched in Carmen's birthday and the lock clicked open. Beyond lay concrete stairs descending into what could only be described as a professional bunker. She had this built during renovations, Wade explained as fluorescent lights flickered on. Told contractors it was a tornado shelter, but she installed power ventilation and internet that would make the FBI jealous. The underground room was larger than Carmen's office with industrial shelving and sophisticated computers. But what dominated the space was a massive evidence board covering one wall. Photographs, documents, timeline charts, and red string connecting elements like a detective show. How long was she working on this, I asked. 3 years. Started right after she bought the ranch. Said she'd stumbled onto something that made her sick about the boys. The evidence was meticulously organized. Adrian's section showed bank records from accounts I'd never heard of, photographs of him meeting known criminals, and transcripts of recorded conversations discussing money transfers and cleaning operations. Millions of dollars flowing through shell companies and offshore accounts. Diego's section was equally damning. Investment statements showing fabricated returns, client lists of elderly retirees who'd trusted him with life savings, and spreadsheets tracking how he'd robbed Peter to pay Paul while skimming massive fees. The Ponzi scheme had been running 18 months and was collapsing. She recorded phone calls, I asked, examining a transcript. Had help from a private investigator out of Dallas, Wade said. Former FBI guy who specialized in white-collar crime. Carmen paid him to document everything legally. As I continued examining evidence, a medical file caught my attention. Diego's name was on the tab along with records from Houston hospitals and specialists. The diagnosis was clear chronic kidney disease, stage 4, progressing rapidly toward complete renal failure. He's dying, I whispered. Mrs. Rodriguez found out 6 months ago. Wade confirmed. Diego had been hiding it, probably didn't want to appear weak to investors. But Carmen knew the signs from when her father went through it. The medical reports painted a grim picture. Diego would need a transplant within the year, possibly sooner. Best matches typically came from immediate family. Carmen had been tested and found compatible, but she'd never told anyone. She was going to save him, I realized, even knowing what he'd done. Wade nodded. That's who she was. But then the stroke took her, and now I stared at the medical files, understanding dawning. Diego's crimes weren't just greed. They were desperation. A dying man trying to secure money for his family before his body failed. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained the urgency. The meeting was set for Monday morning. Adrian and Diego arrived with their lawyers, confident they would walk away with millions. They'd convinced Catalina to drive up from Austin again, her presence clearly intended as emotional leverage against me. I sat at the head of the conference table in the ranch's dining room, which Wade had transformed into a professional meeting space. Across from me, representatives from Lone Star Energy waited with contracts and geological surveys spread before them. Dad, Adrian began, his voice condescending. Our proposal is simple. A 3-way split of all assets with professional management for maximum returns. Diego nodded, pulling out financial projections. I've run the numbers. We're looking at generational wealth, trust funds, debt payoffs, maybe a family foundation in Mom's name. The irony of Diego discussing trust funds while running a Ponzi scheme wasn't lost on me, but I kept my expression neutral. That sounds reasonable, I said calmly. But before we decide, I think our partners should know exactly who they'd be working with. I slid a thick manila folder to Tom Brennan, Lone Star's regional director. Financial records for both my sons going back 3 years. Thought you might want to review them before any long-term agreements. Adrian's smile faltered as Brennan opened the folder. Bank statements, transaction records, recorded conversations. Everything Carmen had documented about their crimes. What the hell is this? Adrian demanded. Evidence, I replied. Evidence that my eldest son has been laundering money for a Mexican cartel using his law practice as a front. And evidence that Diego has been operating a Ponzi scheme defrauding elderly investors. The room fell silent except for pages turning. Brennan's expression grew increasingly grim. These are serious allegations, Diego said, voice shaking. Dad, you can't believe... I believe what the evidence shows... I interrupted. Phone records, bank transfers, witness statements. Your mother spent 3 years building an airtight case. Catalina stared at her brothers in shock. Is this true, Adrian, Diego? Their silence was more damning than any confession. Brennan closed the folder and stood. Mr. Rodriguez, Lone Star Energy cannot continue our partnership under these circumstances. We're terminating all contracts pending legal review. He gathered his materials and headed for the door. Wait, Diego called. You can't just... We don't do business with criminals, Brennan replied without turning. As the oil executives departed, Adrian turned on me with fury. You son of a bitch. You've destroyed us. Do you know what you've done? I've protected this family's reputation, I said. Something you should have considered before becoming criminals. Catalina was crying, the weight of her brother's betrayal sinking in. How could you lie to all of us? But Diego wasn't listening. His face had gone ashen, and he was clutching his side, breathing in short, painful gasps. Diego, I said, anger immediately replaced by concern. He tried to stand, took one step, and collapsed. As the oil executives walked away and Adrian screamed about lawsuits, Diego clutched his side and fell to the floor. Call 911, I shouted, my anger instantly replaced by fear. The ambulance ride to San Antonio felt like the longest hour of my life, watching Diego's face grow paler with each passing mile. The paramedics worked efficiently monitoring his vitals while radioing ahead to University Hospital, but I could see the concern in their eyes as his blood pressure continued dropping. Adrian rode in his own car behind us, his earlier fury replaced by the kind of fear that only comes when you realize money means nothing if you lose the people you love. Catalina had insisted on riding with me in the ambulance, holding Diego's hand and whispering prayers in Spanish, something she hadn't done since childhood. His kidneys are shutting down, one of the paramedics explained as we pulled into the hospital's emergency bay. We need to get him into dialysis immediately. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of medical terminology and waiting room coffee. Dr. Sarah Brennan, the hospital's chief nephrologist, emerged from Diego's room with the kind of expression that meant serious conversations were ahead. Mr. Rodriguez, she said, pulling me aside, your son is in end-stage renal failure. Without immediate intervention, we're looking at weeks, not months. What kind of intervention? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Kidney transplant. Diego's been managing this condition for months, probably longer, but the stress of today's events pushed his system over the edge. We need to find a compatible donor as soon as possible. Adrian appeared at my shoulder, having caught the tail end of the conversation. What are his chances? With a good match from a family member, excellent. The surgery is routine, and recovery time is typically 6 to 8 weeks for both donor and recipient. Dr. Brennan explained the testing process as nurses drew blood from Adrian, Catalina, and me. The compatibility screening would take several hours, but family members had the best odds of being suitable donors. I should have seen this coming. I said more to myself than anyone else. Carmen knew. She'd been tested and found compatible, but she never told him. Mom knew Diego was sick, Catalina asked, her voice small. She knew everything, I replied. About the kidney disease, about the crimes, about the desperation that drove both your brothers to make terrible choices. For the first time since the confrontation at the ranch, Adrian looked genuinely ashamed. Dad, I never meant for things to go this far. The money, the schemes, it started small, just a way to help Diego pay for treatments he couldn't afford. And then it became about more than medical bills, I said. Yeah, he admitted. It became about proving we were successful, about living up to some image we thought we needed to maintain. Mom would be ashamed of what we became. Catalina reached across the waiting room chairs to take her brother's hand. She would be proud that you're here now that you're trying to save Diego. As we sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, something shifted in our family dynamic. The anger and accusations that had defined our relationships since Carmen's death began giving way to the kind of love that had always existed underneath. Complicated, sometimes painful, but unbreakable. I'm sorry, Papa, Catalina said quietly. I should have trusted you. I should have known you'd never hide anything important from us. You were protecting your brothers, I replied. That's what family does. Dr. Brennan returned as the sun was setting outside the hospital windows, carrying a manila folder with our test results. But instead of the relief I'd expected to see in her expression, there was confusion, maybe even concern. Mr. Rodriguez, we have the test results. There's something unusual we need to discuss. In the quiet consultation room, Dr. Brennan spread the lab results across the table, her expression troubled. The fluorescent lights hummed as she arranged papers with careful precision. Mr. Rodriguez, she began gently, the compatibility testing revealed something unexpected. You're not a match for Diego, but the blood work showed genetic markers that prompted additional tests. She slid a DNA analysis toward me. The technical language was dense, but the conclusion was clear. Probability of paternal relationship, 0.0%. I don't understand, I said, though part of me already did. Diego is not your biological son, Dr. Brennan said softly. The genetic markers indicate no familial relationship. I'm sorry. I know this is shocking. 29 years of fatherhood flashed before my eyes. Teaching Diego to ride a bike, helping with homework, celebrating his successes. All built on a foundation I'd never questioned. There has to be a mistake, I whispered. We ran the test twice to be certain, she replied. I'm truly sorry. The drive back to the ranch passed in a blur. Wade guided me to Carmen's secret room without a word. With trembling hands, I clicked on the video labeled Final Message about Diego. Carmen's face filled the screen, looking tired, older, as if her secrets had finally become too heavy. My darling James, she began, if you're watching this, then you know the truth about Diego. I can only imagine your pain right now, and I'm so sorry for what I did to our family. Tears blurred my vision as she continued. When you were deployed in Afghanistan for your second tour, I was lonely, scared, and made the biggest mistake of my life. I had an affair with Jeff Collins, a man I met at the base support group. It only lasted a few weeks, but Diego was conceived during that time. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My wife, my Carmen, had betrayed me while I was serving our country. I wanted to tell you when you came home, but when I saw you hold Diego for the first time, saw the love in your eyes, I couldn't destroy that. You became his father in every way that mattered, James. You raised him, loved him, shaped him into the man he became. Carmen's voice broke with emotion. I kept Jeff's contact information all these years through a private investigator. He moved to El Paso, became a construction foreman, married, had other children. He never knew about Diego, but when I learned about the kidney disease, I had him tested secretly. He's a match, James. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The ranch, the oil money. It was my way of trying to make amends for the lie I've lived for 29 years. I wanted to give you something valuable, something that would secure your future, because I knew someday the truth would come out, and you might never forgive me. Carmen leaned closer to the camera, tears streaming down her face. Jeff Collins lives in El Paso. He's a good man who made a mistake with a married woman 30 years ago. The private investigator's contact is in the blue folder. Jeff doesn't know about Diego, but I believe, I pray, that he'll want to help save the son he never knew he had. The screen went dark, leaving me with a truth that had shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, and my life. Through my tears, I heard Carmen's final words, I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. 2 weeks later, I sat in a coffee shop in El Paso across from a man who had Diego's eyes. Jeff Collins was 54, with graying temples and weathered hands of someone who'd spent decades in construction. I never knew, he said quietly. Carmen never told me she was pregnant. If I'd known, I would have tried to help. She was protecting everyone, I replied. Carmen always thought 3 steps ahead. Jeff showed me pictures of his wife and 2 teenage daughters. I've been married to Linda for 22 years. My girls don't know about what happened with Carmen. But when you told me about Diego needing a kidney, I knew I had to help. The compatibility testing at El Paso General took 3 days. Jeff was a perfect match. While waiting for surgical scheduling, I got to know Diego's biological father. Decent, hardworking, the kind of man who coached Little League and helped elderly neighbors. I want to meet him before the surgery, Jeff said. I need him to know I'm not trying to replace you as his father. The meeting took place at the ranch. Diego, still weak, but determined, sat with Adrian and Catalina on the porch, a united front I hadn't seen since childhood. You have your mother's stubborn streak, Jeff said with a sad smile, and apparently my kidney's tendency to quit working. Diego laughed despite everything. Lucky me on both counts. Giving you a kidney isn't about claiming you, Jeff continued. James Rodriguez raised you, loved you, shaped you. I'm just grateful I can help. After Jeff left to prepare for surgery, my children asked to speak with me privately. We sat in Carmen's old office, the weight of recent revelations heavy between us. Adrian spoke first, his voice breaking. Dad, I'm so sorry. For the crimes, for turning Catalina against you, for questioning your integrity, when you've been nothing but honest your whole life. I'm sorry too, Papa, Catalina whispered. I should have trusted you. Should have known you'd never hide anything important from us. Diego, despite his weakness, leaned forward. You had every right to walk away from me when you learned I wasn't your biological son. Instead, you're helping save my life. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for it anyway. I looked at my 3 children. broken, ashamed, but finally honest, and felt Carmen's presence in the room. "You're my children," I said simply. "Not because of blood, but because of choice. Because of love. That doesn't change because you made mistakes." "Even after everything we did?" Adrian asked. "Especially after everything you did. That's what real fathers do. We love you through the worst of yourselves and help you become better." The surgery was scheduled for the following month. Adrian began cooperating with investigators working to return stolen funds. Diego reached out to his victims trying to make amends. Catalina took leave from teaching to coordinate everything. "Carmen would be proud," I told Catalina one evening as we watched the oil derricks pump in the distance. "She would be proud of you most of all," she replied, "for choosing forgiveness over anger." The night before Diego's surgery, I sat in Carmen's secret room one final time. Her image filled the screen, beautiful and hopeful. "I know you're angry with me, James," she said, "but I hope you'll understand that everything I did was about love. Complicated, imperfect human love." As I headed upstairs, I realized she was right. Carmen had been right all along. Family isn't about blood. It's about the people who choose to love you, protect you, and never give up on you. Even from beyond the grave, she was still teaching us what really mattered. The oil derricks continued their rhythm outside, pumping wealth from the earth Carmen had reclaimed. But her real treasure wasn't measured in dollars. It was the lesson that love, forgiveness, and second chances could heal even the deepest wounds. Looking back on everything that happened after Carmen's death, I realized how close I came to losing my family forever. The secrets, the lies, the money, they nearly destroyed us all. But sometimes God has a way of using our darkest moments to teach us the most important lessons. Don't be like me, friends. Don't let pride and anger blind you to what really matters. When I discovered my son's crimes, my first instinct was revenge. When I learned about Carmen's affair, I wanted to hate her memory. But God showed me that forgiveness isn't about what others deserve. It's about what love requires. The truth is, this true story taught me that family isn't defined by blood or perfection. It's defined by the choice to keep loving, even when it hurts. Diego may not share my DNA, but he's my son because I chose to raise him, protect him, and forgive him. That's what real fathers do. Carmen's ranch became more than just inheritance. It became a place where broken people learn to heal. These grandpa stories I'm sharing aren't just about oil money or family drama. They're about second chances, about how God can work through our mistakes to create something beautiful. The oil wells still pump on that Texas land, but the real treasure was learning that love conquers blood, forgiveness heals wounds, and true family is built on choice, not genetics. If this true story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear about forgiveness. Subscribe to hear more grandpa stories about life, love, and the lessons that matter most. Tell me in the comments, what family lesson has shaped your life the most?